this is the explanation of Baha'i marriage and family, and my guest is Mahnaz from Tajikistan, and we're going to explore together some of the concepts and application of Baha'i marriage. And Mahnaz has selected a passage from the Baha'i writings that in her mind needs some explanation. So I'm going to ask Mahnaz to read that passage in segments, and then we'll go ahead and explain it and see where we go and how we understand this concept of Baha'i marriage. Okay.
Thank you, Keyvan Khanam. Yes, I have a couple questions. I just read a very, as my understanding, interesting quote from Abdul Baha. It's a selection writings from Abdul Baha, and it talks about the Baha'i marriage. So I really would like to understand what does it mean. Baha'i marriage is the commitment of the two parties, one to the other, and their mutual attachment of mind and heart. So my question is, what does it mean, mutual commitment, mind and heart?
Mutual attachment. Okay. So I guess the first...
Right, sorry. So my question is, what does it mean, mutual attachment of mind and heart?
And there's a passage that comes after that. Maybe you want to read that part also.
Right. Each must, however, exercise the utmost care to become thoroughly acquainted with the character of the other, that the binding covenant between them may be a tie that will endure forever.
Well, exactly. So there are a whole lot of interesting concepts in there that we need to explore. So to begin with, I think we should start with the whole notion of human psyche as we understand it from the Baha'i writings and all those 5 zones in the Baha'i, in the person's psyche that we see a lot of references in the Baha'i writings. For example, in the prayer where we start with it, the spiritual assembly, is the mention of that our thoughts, our views, our feelings may become as one reality, manifesting the spirit of union throughout the world. So we're going to see the relationship between these aspects of the human mind. So in order to do that, I would like to draw a 5-pointed star where represents each of the zones represents one aspect of human mind and psyche as we understand it. So this is the 5-pointed star, and don't expect a perfect one because
no, it's a perfect. It's really
okay, so first we're going to look at what we call sense perception.
What does it mean? What does it mean, sense perception?
Okay, very good question. This is what actually is referred to in the Baha'i writings as our physical powers. That means you have how many senses?
I don't know.
How many senses do you have? You are able to...
Actually, eye, nose...
Yeah, you see, you smell, you taste.
Right.
3.
3.
You hear, and you touch.
4, 5.
5. So these are 5 senses. We call them, Abdul Baha makes the reference to them as our physical powers. Okay?
Oh, it's very interesting.
Interesting, exactly. So sense perception means, this is the means, with our senses, basically we experience the world. Either we see the world, we smell it, we hear it, we touch it, or we taste it. You look at someone and you see their smile.
Right.
And you look at someone and you see their frown. So then you basically experience their smile or the frown, and then your experience starts to, you start to experience it. So now the question is, so what is that we do with our sense perception? We have to take a kind of a look at that and say, let's say that you sit in a room and way across the room there is somebody who you see smiling. So basically your eyes sees a smile. So the question is, this is the zone of feeling, huh? So feeling, which incidentally is considered to be a spiritual power, according to the Baha'i writings. So if you see somebody smiling, how would you feel? What would be the feeling?
My heart is getting uplifted.
Okay, so give me one name for a feeling.
Maybe
Happy?
joy.
Joy, happiness, very
Joy.
good. So you see the
What's
smile,
that?
you feel joy, and so this is intention. So that means there's something that you want to do, or it is intention, or want, or hope, or even desire. All of these are in this zone. So you see the smile, you feel joy and happiness. What do you want to do?
I want to give back the
You want-
smile.
Exactly. So you want to give back. So this would be your action. So which is your action or your deed would be smiling back.
Right.
So you see, this is the cycle. This is the.
What about this one?
Very good. Very good. Now we're going to come back to that. So my next question is it possible that you see the smile and but somebody else is sitting over there, they do not feel joy or happiness. They see the same smile, they feel very uncomfortable when they look at that smile. Is it possible?
Maybe.
So what is the difference between you looking at that smile and feeling happiness and this person looking at that smile, the same smile, and feeling uncomfortable? What changes?
Maybe when, I don't know, my understanding, maybe that person can feel a joy, or maybe that person can, I don't know, it's a very good question.
So what could change that looking at the same smile, two different people, one person feels happy and joyful, the other one feels very uncomfortable, like just really.
Maybe because smile is not natural.
Okay. So what is it that makes them feel uncomfortable?
Not happiness, not joy, not
Yeah.
not gladness.
Yeah, why not? Why is it that they feel uncomfortable? They feel EBGBs, they feel, ooh.
Maybe, I don't know, maybe that they don't like this person, they don't have a love.
Well, you're getting close to it actually. What it is that they have a particular thought about that smile. So what you're thinking is this person is a nice person.
Okay.
They are really smiling at me because they are happy and they want to send a very positive message.
Right.
So you're thinking a lot of positive thoughts about that smile that you're seeing. And as a result, you're feeling happy and joyful and you want to return the smile and you do return the smile. The other person looks at the same smile, they might think this person has some issues or some ulterior motives, or they don't have a very clean mind, or all kinds of things. And as a result, they're feeling uncomfortable. And
their intention
would be to disconnect, perhaps disconnect. And maybe their action to disconnect would be to look away. So one of the ways we disconnect from another person is to look away, not to look into the person's eyes and connect. So when we look in the other person's face, and especially their eyes, we connect with them. When we look away, that's one of the ways we put a wall. We would disconnect from them. So you see how the sense perception, what we see, what happens in the world, does not decide the whole experience. But what we think about what happens in the world is our thought that decides what is our experience.
So my question is, how's everything which one you draw here belongs to the quote. Which one I read?
Very good. So here we come to the realization that what Abdul Baha mentions, that man's reality is his thought. Man's reality is his thought. So our reality is not what happens, because what happens is completely irrelevant, independent of what we think about it. So because our reality is our thought, it is very important in order to join in a relationship with other people, that we have a clarity of all the time of what are the ways we think and where is the source of our thinking. How do we manage our thought? What kind of thoughts we choose? What do we know about the whole process of thought? Because one of the things that is this wonderful passage mentions, that the two people, their thoughts and their mind and their heart will become one. So in order for you to be able to make them one, you really need to know what part of your process is your thinking, what is it you're feeling, which part is your intention, and which part is your action. So when you know all these components, then you're able to work with them, and you're able to look at them, and you're able to examine them, and you're able to adjust them, and then you have a communication based on these concepts with the other person, and you're having an ability to have a consultation or a relationship. Okay?
Wow, it's a very interesting. I never thought about this.
Well, now we have. There's a very fascinating. Actually, this is kind of a joke, but it's not really a joke. But it's very meaningful here, and it goes like this. It talks about the importance of knowing all these zones. That this person was a very, very good mechanic himself. Which is, he used to fix his car all the time. So one day something goes wrong with his car, and he tries every trick that he knows to fix his car, and he cannot. The car doesn't start. So finally he gives up, and he says, I cannot fix this car, so I need to take it to a mechanic. And it really, really be worth it, because I am really helpless. I've tried everything I can, and I cannot fix it. So anyway, he takes his car to the mechanic. And so here it is, he takes it to the mechanic, and he says to the mechanic, you know, I'm a very good mechanic myself, but no matter what I did, I couldn't fix it. I really don't know what's wrong with it. I would really appreciate it if you can make my car work, because I need my car. And do you think you can fix it? So the mechanic lifts up the hood and takes a look underneath, and he says, yes, I think I can fix it. And he says, oh, that's wonderful. So how much would you charge? He says, well, I think I will charge about $100. This guy hears $100, he thinks, wow, that's really nothing, because this must be a very difficult thing, because you know, I tried everything I could, and it must be very difficult. And he's feeling really excited and really grateful and really happy to be able to get his car fixed with just $100. And then he just absolutely cannot wait to give him the money and get his car fixed. So he says, go ahead. So the guy goes, okay. So he puts the car over there, he takes a few steps back and comes forward, and he shoves a big kick on the front of the car. And the engine starts going. And he says, $100. The guy hears that, and he thinks, he didn't work anything, he didn't do anything, he just kicked the car. This is in his head, you know? And he's feeling really cheated. He's feeling very angry, very upset, and cheated. That for a kick, he's paying that much money, and he wants to argue about paying him the $100. So he says, what are you talking about? You just kicked my car, and you're asking me for $100? I'm not going to pay you $100 for a kick.
Wow.
So the guy says, well, wait a second, you know? That's not true. I only charge you $1 for the kick, but $99 for knowing where to kick. It's a very good
joke. I love it. It's really very amazing. So you have to know how can you do something.
You have to know where to kick yourself every moment, every day in relationships that you have in order to get the right result.
Right.
Because if you don't know that you're feeling upset and angry is because of a thought that you're thinking about the same thing that somebody else thinking something different and they're not feeling angry, so you will never know how to go back and really adjust your thought, choose a different thought and be able to have a different experience.
You know, it's very interesting how the deeds can come. So it starts with the sense, and then with the thought, and then with the feeling, and then come to the intention. And then, like in this joke, when it comes to the action, it can stop.
Well, it could be any of the zones could be the beginning of the cycle. But generally, we judge other people based on their actions. Generally, we judge ourselves based on our intention. And that can create problem because, you know, I'm coming and I step on your toe, and so all you experience is your toe is being smushed, you know, and you're thinking, oh, she just doesn't care, you know, she just is very sloppy, and you're feeling upset, and you're saying to yourself, she just basically did it on purpose, really, and my action created a problem in you. Now I basically judge myself based on my intention. I said, I didn't do it on purpose. I didn't do anything bad because I didn't do it on purpose. You're saying, you smushed my foot. I said, I didn't mean to do it. So here we have a discrepancy here. So that's one of the things that we have to consider. Always we judge ourselves by what was our intention. Other people cannot know our intention. Right. They only judge us based on our action. And that, in a relationship, can cause another problem. So, two people in marriage, they need to be able to talk about all these different zones with great comfort, to be able to have a conversation that can get them out of those little impasses where they can judge each other based on their action, and then the person judges themselves based on their intention. Exactly. But anyway, so now here what is important is that when we look at the Baha'i writings, we see that in order to be happy, first of all human beings have two selves. The Baha'i writings makes a reference to a higher self and a lower self. Right. The spiritual self or the animal self. In the terminology of the movie industry, we all have a Luke Skywalker in us and a Darth Vader with us. So the good self, the lower self. So what we say is that we have a higher self, the self, the spiritual self, the God self in us, and we also have a small lower self, the Darth Vader self. So these two constantly compete within each person. So there's no person in the world that does not have these two selves within them. So any opportunity that comes that we have to make a decision, one of these two basically becomes the dominant one. One of these two is the one who opens the door and says yes. So depending on which one becomes in charge, we either manifest the spirit of the lower self or the spirit of the spiritual self.
I'm sorry, can I ask you a question? Do you think is it two self? One of them is a high self and another one is a lower self. Lower self. So is it two can become an ego? One of them can feel that, oh, I'm so wonderful, I'm so great, and another one can say, well, I cannot do anything, I'm not be able. Something instead of this.
Generally, the spiritual self, when you look at it, basically is very much aligned with the teachings, the spiritual teachings of almost all the religions of the world. This is the self that wants to be truthful, wants to be compassionate, wants to be honest, wants to be in unity, wants to be in harmony, wants to be at peace, wants to sacrifice, wants to make others happy. This is the spiritual self that really is very much identified in the spiritual teachings of all the luminaries of the world. You see the same principles of character in the teachings of Moses, of Christ, of Buddha, of Krishna, of Zoroaster, of Muhammad, of Baha'u'llah. Be kind, be compassionate, be loving,
so
be
all
patient.
the virtues.
All the virtues are basically the characteristic of this self, plus the most recent values, and I'll explain the values because they two go to hand together. This self, basically, when I said this is like Darth Vader in Star Wars,
Right.
this is the self which is very self-centered, is very selfish, is basically insecure, is the one that lashes out, is the one that gets jealous, is the one that separates itself from the others, doesn't see itself in unity with others, is the one that wants to be superior, is the one that wants to be over, is the one that wants to have all the power to dominate. This is the lower self. This is the Darth Vader. This is the Luke Skywalker. Now, both of these live in each one of us. And somebody, they say a Native American grandpa was walking with his
I remember
son.
that story.
You know?
Right.
It says that we have two wolves in each one of us. And he says the son which one gets to be making the decision? The grandpa says what?
Which one to which one you give more food?
Exactly. Whichever one you feed, that one gets to be stronger. So that means what? Feeding means the kind of thoughts that you entertain that is of this kind, of the lower self. The more you entertain lower self thoughts, the stronger lower self becomes. So it's very important in order to know the character of the other person in marriage, we need to know the patterns of their thinking. What are the bases of their thinking? What are their values? Where do they come from? Now here we come across something very fascinating, and that is the difference between values and virtues. I'll explain that. This is very, very, very fascinating. You see, in the Baha'i marriage, we have the passage that says the vows when they exchange, they don't say, I will be faithful to you, you be faithful to me. They don't say, I'll be good to you, you be good to me. That is not the agreement, that is not the commitment. The commitment is a triangular commitment, which is very interesting and fascinating. And generally, this is the only triangle in relationship that elevates both people. Most triangles in psychology are really not very good. For example, if two parents triangle with their own child, that means the child gets caught in between. And whenever the parents fight or get angry, the child becomes sick, or the child does something naughty, so the parents will disengage from one another and attend to the child. And this triangle actually is unhealthy triangle. There is one triangle in psychology that not only is healthy but elevates the two people. And that triangle is where this upper zone of the triangle is the source of adoration of each one of the couple. The point where they want to draw and uplift themselves towards. So let's say if each one of the couple here, when they get married,
you see a wonderful heart.
Exactly. So each one of these have a relationship with this luminary, this point of adoration, that is the source of their values that reach up to. So as they try to climb up towards him, that means to become like their luminary, to become, as Baha'u'llah says, to become, as Abdul Baha says, to become as their point of adoration advises. As one becomes that, the other mysteriously might also be inspired to go that way. As this person is in the face of maybe a mistake that this one made, if this one is compassionate and kind, that means this person becomes more godlike. The other one might be encouraged also to become more compassionate. As they climb up this ladder,
they're helping to each other.
Their distance becomes what?
More close.
Less and less and less and less. And in the values that this entity presents, they become one. And the importance.
So when it can be by the end of the life?
Depends on how they are able to basically get rid of as much as possible of this and become more of this. Because when they become about their values, they become one. And I'll explain the difference between values and virtues. Now, what are some of the virtues that we know? Give me some virtues.
Joy.
Okay, joy is a virtue.
Love.
Love is a virtue.
Happiness.
Happiness is a virtue. What else?
Let's see, the respectful.
Respect, very good. Acceptance. These are all, let's say these are for the sake of, these are virtues, right?
Right.
Okay, now, so now we come to the value. The question of value means love in everybody, perhaps, let's say everybody understands love the same way. The question of value means who do you love becomes about your value, right? For example, you might say that during the time of Moses, people loved the people within their own tribe. But anybody who fell outside of the tribe, they didn't love, they didn't care to love. And in fact, many times they basically took each other and killed each other and fighting and all kinds of things. So the attribute or the virtue of love was basically there, nothing different than now. But the value at that time that they practiced was love only people that are near you, your family, your tribe. But if it goes outside of that, they don't deserve your love.
Right.
Okay. Now, what has changed from the times of Moses and Christ and Buddha and Krishna to the time of Baha'u'llah is the values that Baha'u'llah teaches has changed.
So Baha'u'llah teaches us that it's not enough when we love family, it's not enough when we love our nations, it's more important to love all the earth.
The whole world.
The whole world.
Exactly. Not only that, he gives us even...
And it's become unity.
Exactly. Even to the point, he says, if your love for this entity becomes the cause of disunity, that it divides you from other people, you should set aside that religion and stick with loving all humanity. So you see, this is a different kind of value system. So a person who has that kind of a value system, when they look at someone being from a different culture, being from a different race, being from a different gender, they are taught, according to the Baha'i values, that men and women are equal. They are like two wings of the bird. So therefore, in marriage, one does not try to dominate the other. Exactly. So the whole dynamics in the marriage
will be healthy.
Changes. Whether healthy or not, it changes to where they are both two wings of the bird. Why maybe it was okay and healthy in 1,000 years ago, 500 years ago.
But not now.
Exactly. For the male to be dominant and the female to be subservient. But Baha'u'llah has changed those values and say, no, the values for today is both of them are going to be the two wings of one bird. So the virtue by itself is not going to be really enough to know. The value that you apply to the virtue is going to be more important than the virtue itself.
Wow, that's amazing.
It is amazing. And the reason actually of the coming of a new messenger is really changing the values, not changing the virtues, because the virtues are eternal.
So changing the value.
It is a changing of values. So it's a progressive revelation of values that requires the coming of the new manifestation to the world.
So is it basically progress to the soul, spiritual soul? also?
What do you mean progress to the spiritual soul?
When I can change my understanding, so my life, my spiritual soul is also growing up.
Well, you see, during the time of Moses, or during the time of Christ, or during the time of Muhammad, you were not expected by the Divine Spirit, your maturity was at the level as a human being, that you were not expected to see men and women as two wings of the bird. So basically, men were more superior, they were in charge, they would command, and the women were basically subservient. So that was not a requirement of it. It's just like when you're 2 years old, your mother does not expect of you to be able to do certain things, and therefore you're not accountable for that. So they guide you. If you go near the fire, they come and slap you on the hand and pull you away. But when you're 16, they expect from you to be able to drive the car,
to carry tasks,
go drive the car, do some things, and bring it back, and be responsible for certain things. So every age, the Divine Spirit expects certain levels of maturity from us. At the age, in the dispensation of Baha'u'llah, the expectation is that we have a different set of values in relation to one another. The expectation is we do not look at each other and see another person's darker skin and think that they are inferior to us because we have a lighter skin. These values have changed. Baha'u'llah says, all humanity is one. You're flowers of the same garden. The colors should be different.
We have to see the virtues.
We have to apply the virtues based on the new values. That means we are going to love people of all colors the same. We are going to consider equal, whether it is a man or a woman. We are to provide education. Actually, Baha'u'llah says for girls, we provide even more important to give education for girls because she becomes the mother and the educator.
She is the first teacher.
Exactly. So you see, while the values of the previous ages was the father is the one who gets the education, if there was one, because he goes and brings the money. So breadwinning was more important than education of the children. Now, during Baha'u'llah's time, education of children are more important than bringing the money. So you see how the values change. So it's very important to know what are the values that are given to us through the teachings of Baha'u'llah. And in marriage, those values make a big difference. Because in the past, the way you love you love someone, maybe you control them, you tell them what to do, that's how you love them. Well, in this new age, Baha'u'llah says that it's not going to work. No, it's not going to be the best you can do. Now you're supposed and required to be able to do consultation. Which means what? Means you have to be able to say, what did I see? Say, I saw you smiling. I thought you were not really very sincere, and I felt uncomfortable, and I just didn't want to talk to you. And that's why I shifted my face. We see how important it is in order to know the character of the other person. That we really need to know who?
Our partner, ourself. First of this.
Exactly. First we have to know our own self.
So if I don't know what I want, how can I find a partner, and how can I find this value and virtues in a partner?
Exactly. Not only what you want, but if you don't know how your process works, what is it that when you feel sad, what is it that you need to do in order to feel not sad? Basically, if you don't know that, you have to go back to your thoughts and examine your thoughts and say, okay, what is it that I'm thinking about? If you don't know how to do that, you don't know how to operate your own car. You don't know how to fix your car.
Right.
Then you are not going to be able to really walk along with another person, and you will not be able to consult, and you will not be able to come to some kind of a conclusion and harmony and understanding with another person. So the Baha'i writing says that there is only one person. The guardian says there's only one person you can change, and who's that?
yourself.
Exactly. That means you really need to know how to operate yourself properly, and how to constantly adjust your values. Every time you say your prayers, basically you're tuning your values. Because let's say when you say the long obligated prayer, you're tuning your values. You say to God every day, you say, do not look upon my hopes and my doings.
Right.
Nay, rather look upon thy will that has encompassed the heavens and the earth. That means you're saying every day, I'm not going to insist upon what I want. God, I will defer to what you want. Basically, open a window and say, I'm willing to consider other hopes and desires. That means in that space, your partner, your spouse, should be able to introduce some desires, and you should be able to talk about it. So you're not a closed-minded person. So every day when we say our prayers, we are basically tuning our values. And as I tune my values, you tune your values, he and she tunes it, the possibility of us having harmony and understanding amongst ourselves increases. It is a vow.
You changed my mind.
How?
Before I came here, I thought that maybe that person to whom I'm supposed to marriage have to help me. But now I'm understanding it's not just only what is that partner can give it to me, what can I give it to him? Exactly. How can I do something that person will be more happy? And basically right now my understanding is the husband and wife, they cannot grow up separately, because basically my understanding that husband and wife, they cannot grow up separately. They have to grow up together.
Yeah, this is friendship.
And they have one purpose in their life: service.
Yeah.
Service, like Shoghi Effendi said, service. There is no success in the world like a service. Service. This is a magnet which can divine the confirmations.
On the condition that when you are serving, that you are able to have a consultation with your partner. So this service brings you closer, because like everything else, even the belief in God can become a source of separation. The ability to consult, the ability to understand the other person. Let's say that one person says, well, I want to go and offer this kind of a service to the community, and let's say the other partner say, well, service is fine, but at this point this is where we are in our life, and maybe we should be doing this kind of a thing. So this ability to hear one another and to be able to consult and to be able to understand is going to be really at the heart of a friendship in marriage, because it's like having two people putting each one of their feet in a sack, and they are hoping to get to the top of the mountain. Well, there's going to be a lot of discussion how they get to the top of the mountain.
But they have one purpose.
The purpose is get to the top of the mountain.
Right.
But however, how they get there is going to be needing a lot of consultation. Exactly, because one of them says, well, you know what, my leg is just basically now is in the cramps. I'm not going to be able to go. And that's the other person, well, the whole purpose of life and marriage is service. I'm going to get up there no matter what. Well, you're going to leave the other person behind. So you have to be able to see things in the bigger picture, and to understand that marriage has got a lot of challenges. It's a lot of work to be able to walk in harmony with another person. Has got to do a lot with you knowing all the components of your own self, to be able to adjust them, to be able to elevate them, to be able to tune them, to be able to consider other alternatives of thinking. And so it takes a lot of different work.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your wonderful lesson. I enjoyed it so much.
Well, I hope that this discussion, this conversation that we had, it would be a good opening for an understanding about Baha'i marriage for others that they have never heard about it.
Of course, and I'm hoping this is the not last lesson.
Yeah.
Maybe we can continue.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Now here, before we finish, do you want to introduce yourself?
Well, my name is John Mahmadova. I'm a Baha'i from Tajikistan and I'm pioneering here in the United States.
Okay, and I'm Keyvan Geula, and I'm a licensed marriage family therapist who integrates the Baha'i writings into its practice, her practice. So it was wonderful to be able to share this with you and see what happens.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
So I said it is very fortunate that in the last 10 years, there has been added research in the field of marriage and family, and there's some wonderful, really useful information that has come out that helps the couples both in the premarital counseling field, which I absolutely recommend, one of the best gifts anybody can give to any young persons is to pay for their premarital counseling. And there are so many wonderful tools to use. Because when you go for premarital counseling, it's the spirit of learning, investigation, preparation. When you go after there is a trouble, then it is going to be about treatment. And treatment, it never is so exciting and positive. So, but you have to do it. So that's my recommendation. But when we say marriage, basically, and we say Baha'i marriage, we're talking about a very fascinating and unique relationship. This is a relationship. And then we're going to look at this and say, what is the nature of this relationship? Well, when you go into marriage, who are you taking with you into this relationship? What is the first person that you are taking into this relationship? Yourself. So therefore, one of the first things you have to do is to really, really know your own self. And this is what Baha'u'llah says, that we need to know our own self. We need to know how we can elevate ourselves, what makes us to be elevated, and what makes us to go lower than self. So we need to really know how to operate our own instrument, right? So what I'm going to do is give you a tool of knowing your own instrument. So the tool is actually a cross between, is this 5-pointed star. You see it over there, but I'll draw it because that's so crowded now. And this 5-pointed star basically is a tool that is used both, and my star is always crooked. It doesn't matter what I do, it's always crooked. So just, never mind. This is a tool between a field in psychotherapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, and psychodynamics, and the Baha'i writings. So it's really a wonderful integration of the two. So you can get the benefit of these two worlds, because Baha'u'llah says science and religion have to be what? Hand in hand. Okay, very good. So when we look at the way we operate, we see that in reality, the first way we are aware of the outside world is through our senses, right? So what does Abdul Baha say about our senses? He refers to it as what kind of power? Does anybody know? He calls them the physical powers. And so what are our senses? Anybody knows what are these senses that we use in order to connect with others physically? Okay, 5 senses. So these are, in the faith, we refer to them as the physical powers. Okay, very good. So now, why is it that we really need to know our own self? And I have to give you a really sweet, very effective joke that I learned from many years ago. How many of you know how to fix a car? Okay, pretty good. Very good. All these people, one person knows, goodness, you want to learn how to fix a car. But everybody drives a car here. So there was this guy who was actually a very good mechanic, excellent mechanic. and he thought that he can fix his car. So one day he comes and he has had trouble. He has to go somewhere. He cannot start his car. So he does whatever he knows and he thinks that he should do, and the car does not run. So he's really getting desperate. And finally, he decides that, you know what, I really need this car to work, and I have to do something. I don't know what to do. And if anybody can fix this, I'll be so grateful to this person. So he decides, you know what, I'm going to take it to the best mechanics, and I'm going to pay whatever they say to fix this car. So he takes this car, tows the car, and goes over there, and he shows to the guy, he says, could you please, I really, really have great sentimental attachment to this car. Do you think you can fix it? I'm a good mechanic. I did anything you can imagine. I just cannot get it started. And the guy says, well, yeah, maybe so, I don't know. So he just checks up, he looks at it, and he then goes back and forth, and he says, yeah, I think I can fix it. The guy said, wow, you can fix it? I'll be so indebted to you. I'll pay you anything. How much would you charge? He's waiting to hear some big amount. And the guy says, $100. Hey, $100, that's nothing. I'd be so happy, please. He says, so you want me to fix it? He says, oh, absolutely, go ahead. So the mechanic looks at the car, takes a few steps back, comes forward, and then he gives it a kick. And the engine goes, starts. And he says, $500. The guy said, what? $100? What in the world are you talking about? You just kicked my car? You want to charge me $100 for a kick? He says, no. He said, it's not $100 for the kick. No. He said, I charge you only $1 for the kick. But I charge you $99 for where to kick. So all of us need to know, because really in any relationship, it doesn't matter whether it's your relationship with Baha'u'llah, whether your relationship with your spouse or friend or parents, whether your relationship with your own self. These are the three major relationships we have, all of us have. And so in all these relationships, the only person you can kick is who? Yourself. So you better know where to kick yourself. And that's what your reflection will be at the end of every day. Where should I be kicking myself? I did that, I said that, I heard that, it was not a pleasant exchange. My mom was upset with me, my brother was upset with me, Baha'u'llah was upset with me, I was upset with me. Where would I be kicking myself? And that's what the question you'll be asking. If you discover where, then you are on the way to improvement. So that would be your rescue. And that's it. That's absolute truth. So your sense perception, on the flip side of that, actually we have another power, which is a spiritual power, and that is the power of imagination. And only human beings have that. Animals don't have imagination. Because we can sit here in this room, and guess what? Physically we can be here, and emotionally and spiritually we can be completely somewhere else. As the Persians say, "Man dar miyan jam o dilam jaye digar ast." We can do that. But animals cannot do that. The dog is sitting over here, the doggy is here. It is not somewhere else. So whatever we perceive with our senses, in the first place, generally we register what happened around us is our feelings. So, for example, you see somebody, I always use this example because it's so simple. You sit in a big room, you're sitting, and then this was Thanksgiving, there were a lot of people around each other, so across the room there is somebody over there and he's smiling. So if they're smiling, the chances are, how would you be feeling?
Happy.
Happy. And then this is intention, and what would you be wanting to do as a result of that smile? What would be your intention, your want, your hope, your desire? Smile back. And then what would be your action or your deeds that we talk about?
Smile.
Smile. Okay, so then this is really basically the cycle of our operation. This is the engine that we need to look at. These are components of the engine that we need to know about it. Now, is it possible that somebody across the room, in this room, a lot of people, and somebody smiles, but the person, one of the people sitting in the room is having EVGs, uncomfortable? Is it possible?
Yes.
Why is it possible? I mean, what's happening is that the same smile produces feeling good and happy and wanting to smile back and smiling back, and the 3% over there, that same smile is producing kind of an uncomfortable feeling, and the blood pressure is going up, and the rash is developing and stuff like that. Huh?
You think differently?
Very good, because this is that the way they think about the smile. So basically, our reality based on what Abdul Baha says in the Paris talks, man's reality is his thought, the way we think about the same thing. So, if a person has the ability to entertain as much alternative thoughts about something, this person has many choices. Those people who get stuck to their one kind of thought and they cannot entertain any other alternative thought, they become the prisoner of their own thought process and the prisoner of their own self. So the sign of a mature person, a child versus a mature person, is the ability to say, well, that wasn't a very good thought, you know. I don't know. I don't know if I should be thinking that this person is but basically sitting over there, he's just trying to get on my nerve. That's not the only thing I can think of. How many other things can I think of about the same action? And if they're able to think about a lot of different ways of thinking, then they have many windows to free themselves from themselves. Okay, so that's the way it works. Now, all the writings, and among them the most powerful one, I think, and I use a lot, especially with Baha'is, especially because I use it with non-Baha'is, but especially with the youth, is the long obligatory prayer. Long obligatory prayer is a very powerful, psychologically, spiritually tuning fork that basically rearranges and gives you a lot of leverage and alternatives about the way to talk to yourself. The way you talk to yourself. So for example, right at the beginning of the obligatory prayer, you open up the prayer, you look to the left, you look to the right, you look for the divine confirmation, and you stand before God and say, make this prayer a fire. You guys heard about the fire this morning, right? Some of you were in the lecture. Make this prayer, make my prayer a fire. So what do you want this fire to do? That will burn away the veils that have shut me out from thy beauty. Basically, early in the morning, you open your eyes and you open your mouth and say, Baha'u'llah, I want to see your beauty in everything, but I'm veiled from it because of my own self. I want you to help me to turn away and burn this veil so I can see the beauty. Where are you going to see the beauty? I mean, yeah, you can see it in the sunrise, in the sunset, in the leaves, in the flowers. Of course you can see it in all nature. But you can also should be able to see it in the lovers of his beauty. And if you cannot see it, you must really go further in the prayer and ask a lot of other things. Because there's more to come. And then, I have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful sister. She has been pioneering in Venezuela for 30 years. And guess what? She's right on the equator. So she's been burning in the fire and the heat for a lot of years. So really all it's left of her is pure gold. So it's really, really interesting. So she was having a very, and she's got all kinds of interesting issues. And now serves as the auxiliary board member for several countries. Can you imagine that? And so she was talking about a very difficult challenge in a relationship in an extended family, and this was her reflection. She said, you know what, Keyvan, I don't think, so she called me, she wants to reflect with me. She said, Keyvan, I don't think, really, there is a big difference. I don't think this person has a fault. She said, there's a big difference between
having a fault and being weak, having a weakness. I think she has a weakness, but she doesn't have a fault. So she's trying to really, purify this whole thing and soften this whole thing and be very compassionate and very, very loving. But I tell you, from where I was standing, there was a big issue. But she was just seeing it as a little bit of weakness. I said, yeah, you're right. Why not? If you can see it like that, much power be to you. Go ahead. Because you are then able to see the goodness in the other person. And the chances are that their goodness starts to grow. Or at least they will come through. Some cases possible. So, now, what in the world is going to be the whole notion of happiness, by the way, is that when we are able to search for an alternative thought, and then we take that alternative thought and we translate it into what? Action. Into action. Then that's where happiness is. And you go look in all the books that recently have come up, because psychology mostly dealt with depression, anxiety, all of these things. But they, not very much until recent years, they have thought about what brings happiness, because that was not the realm of psychology. Now gradually psychology, spirituality, they're all becoming integrated, thank God. When I went to graduate school, when they asked me, what are you here for? I said, yeah, I have had a very mystical, background, very strong mystical background. I like to kind of bridge it with psychology. The woman got really upset, the head of the department, said, don't you mention that word here again. She don't want to hear anything about spirituality. But now the whole field has really shifted, changed. So the happiness, there is nothing but elevating first the thought, finding that Baha'u'llah-like thought, the kind of thought that Abdu'l-Baha smiles at, because we have that compass, and then translating it into action. Remembering, when I mentioned the compass, remembering that human beings do not have a compass. We don't have an inner compass to know what is good, what is not good. It's impossible, because we become acclimated to our own way of thinking, and we cannot say this is which one is what. It's very much like that frog. How many people know the story of the frog? Okay, the frog is a kind of a, how many people have touched the frog? Okay, it's a very soft and it's cool. It's not, slimy, but it's cool. Anyway, so if you take a frog and you put it in a cool pan, what did the frog do? So this is a nice place, it's nice, it's just like a really nice place, so it stays there. And then if you put the frog in a hot pan, what does the frog do? Jump out. So if you put it, when you put it in the cool pan, if you gradually heat underneath of the frog will never register that it's too hot. Never. Basically, it will stay there until it dies, cooks to death, and will never jump out. All of us, no one excluded, is like that. We become acclimated, accustomed to the environment that we are, and pretty soon we don't even know the difference. And we think everything is okay. So therefore, for our tuning, for our knowledge of how hot it is that we're sitting in, we need to go to the writings every day. And that's why the obligatory prayers are everyday tuning. It's not that you can't play guitar if you just tune it, and then go about it and just play for the rest of the year. It doesn't. Every time you're playing an instrument, you're going to have to tune it. And every time you open your mouth and you relate with another person, you go to Baha'u'llah, you need to tune yourself before you can be really fit to be in the relationship. Okay, so now the other thing that makes the whole situation very complex and complicated is that each one of us, all of us, have two selves, as the Guardian refers to, a spiritual self, a material, an animal self. I would say, those of you who are the age of Star Wars, we all have a Luke Skywalker and a Darth Vader sitting inside each one of us. Look at Harry Potter, look at Lord of the Rings. The good and evil is seated in all of us. Some of us has got Darth Vader renting a place. We're good. And it just accidentally, when somebody that we don't seem to be having a good relationship talks, Darth Vader opens the doors and says, what? And sometimes we develop that kind of pattern with our parents, sometimes we develop it with our spouses. So we just have to be very careful how much Darth Vader gets the best hold of the best of us, right? And the way Darth Vader gets really the best of us is we feed it. That means we entertain a lot of negative thoughts. A lot of thoughts of, oh, so-and-so doing it to get me, so-and-so has got these problems. So there are 4 things that absolutely Darth Vader loves, and he just feeds on it. And we call it, in research, psychology research, we call it 4 horses of apocalypse. I mean, you let any of these horses in, you're done. I mean, you're on the way out. So the first one is criticism. And this is research, actually, by a very wonderful researcher who just passed away, Dr. John Gottman of University of Washington. And John Gottman had a love lab. And so the couples would come and they would wire them, and they would watch and see what kind of things would up the blood pressure and become them really, angry, and would make them agitated. And there's an expression that he actually coined called flooded. It means they become so conquered by their emotions that they just get hijacked, so that you cannot talk to them anymore. Criticism is one of those things. When in a relationship, the spirit of criticism enters, that means we start seeing faults in another person, that is deadly for the relationship. And that basically is going to grab us from the neck, and it's going to be very bad. So we have to really make sure that that doesn't get to become a pattern. And in any relationship, when we don't look at once we do something. We look at the kind of patterns. But the problem is, once we do it, the chances are the second time is going to be what? Easier and more inclined to do it. So you have to make sure that you keep very good gauge of your own self, and you say, never ever I'm going to do that. So criticism is one. The second one is going to be defensiveness, right? So if somebody criticizes you, what is the first thing that you might do naturally? Defend yourself. No, I didn't do it. Yeah, you came, you said to me you're gonna come home and 8 o'clock? No, right now it's 2 o'clock. What have you been doing? And no, I haven't done. There was nothing wrong. So defensiveness basically also eats into the whole vital of a relationship. So when you see that, then there must be you must be registering criticism. So these two already. So the third one is when you have contempt. How many people know what is contempt? What is contempt? What does contempt mean? Huh?
It's when you look down on someone.
Yes, it's a mixture of looking down and being angry and hating and all of those mixtures. A really bad swamp of negative feelings, really. It really suffocates the person who feels contempt. And so contempt is deadly. And finally, the last one is called stonewalling. That means you just basically, as the Persians say, you just don't talk to the other person. That means all the doors of rescue is closed. Not only you have basically, you fill up the room with a lot of smoke, but you all close the doors and shutters and everything like that, and nobody can get in. And that is very bad. Which the opposite of it would be, I'm really, really upset, and I'm really, really worried that I would say something I would regret. So what I like to do is, I like to take a little break, and I'm going to go take a shower, go take a run, maybe say a prayer. I'll come back in an hour or two. I'll sit down and I listen to you first. You tell me what you want me to know and what you want me to understand. And then I'll share with you what I'm thinking and I'm worried about. And generally in difficulties in relationship, there is always underneath an element of fear. And we have to pick ourselves in that spot of fear. Kind of know, what is it that I'm afraid of? And that's a good question to ask ourselves. Okay, so we have about how many minutes? 3 minutes? 30. Oh, very good. Okay, so what I wanted to do is, one of the things I want to say about Baha'i marriage is that the importance of the relationship that each one of the people have with their point of adoration. Who is the point of adoration of each of the people? Because we all have a point of adoration. Some people worship money, some people worship power, some people worship sex, some people worship, I don't know, control, some people worship Baha'u'llah. Some people say they worship Baha'u'llah, but they worship some other things, so we just have to we just kind of have to be going, figure out really what do we worship, and then what do other person worship. It's very important that the point of adoration of the two people who get into the sack is the same. Otherwise, it's going to be trouble. So, in the Baha'i marriage, we never say, I will be taking care of you, I will do this for you, you will do this for me until death do us apart. We don't do that. Because that's a tit-for-tat relationship. Tit-for-tat relationship, according to research, is very wobbly. Because why? Because the minute the other person is not going to work for you, you're not going to give them breakfast. If the other person is not cooking for you, you're not giving them sex. Just not a good dynamics. So what you want to do is everybody's attention has to be, how do I be getting closer and closer to my point of adoration? So therefore, you have to know your point of adoration. So if it's Abdul Baha, your point of adoration, it's very easy. You go read the story about Abdul Baha, passage from Abdul Baha, and then you just rearrange yourself a little bit, and then you just basically shake all the worldly stuff from yourself, and you start climbing up. And the other person will do the same thing. So couples, when they come to me, and they say, these are Baha'i couples, and they say, I don't know if I can trust my spouse. I said, well, what is it that you want to trust your spouse? I don't know if my spouse is cheating on me or not. I said, well, what is your spouse's point of adoration? Who does she or he worship? Well, if they say that they worship Baha'u'llah or Abdul Baha, things is very easy, because whether they do something right or wrong is going to be within the state of their covenant with Baha'u'llah, right? That's what keeps them online. Not the other person becoming angry or not angry. You know, we basically, in the Baha'i marriage, we say, we will verily abide by what? By the will of God. We don't abide by the will of each other. Because the other person says, honey, if you love me, you will take a little drink with me. You say, thank you so much, but I got my covenant with Baha'u'llah. I love you in the context of my relationship with Baha'u'llah. I'm not going to basically forget that and then have a drink with you because you like it. This is not love anyways. So the whole definition of love basically is very elevated in the Baha'i relationship, Baha'i marriage. And I come to back. One of the things which is very important is the whole notion of virtues and how we express them. In the Baha'i marriage, the virtues are very important, you know, wonderful. And so what are some of the virtues?
Kindness, reverence,
kindness, patience, truthfulness is the foundation of all virtues. What else?
generosity,
Huh? Humility, I like that. Humility is a very good one.
Love.
Love. Okay, let's take some of these. We have a whole bunch. Let's just take love, okay? And we just were talking with a wonderful Baha'i couple. They said themselves, they were in hell and now they have come out and they're very happy and they're exploring and whatever and so on. And then so we talked about this issue of virtues. So virtues by themselves mean nothing. So if you say, well, you know, I want you to be loving. Of course, people at the time of Moses, right, they were very loving. But who were they loving to? The people of their own tribe. Anybody outside of the tribe, what did they do with them? Kill them and rape them and whatever, it was fine. That was the way. So what happens in here? We express our virtues in a context of our values. So we need to know what are the values that we apply our virtues with. So during the time of Muhammad, who did the
people of Islam basically hold within their circle of their love? Who did they love? People of the book. Anybody who was not the people of the book was basically not beneficiary of their love. During the time of Baha'u'llah, the value has changed. Basically, every manifestation brings the progressive revelation of values. So during the time of Baha'u'llah at this age, what is the value for love? Where do we apply love? Every human being in the world. He didn't say don't love the poor, don't love the blacks, don't love the whites, don't love the Americans, don't love the Persians, don't love the tall, don't love the... he did not, even he says, you kiss the hand of your enemies. Basically, Baha'u'llah liberated us from any exclusivity and smallness of our circle values. So our challenge is really great. Basically, we need to liberate ourselves from the tribal thinking. And we have a lot of tribal thinking still. We live in the time of Baha'u'llah, but our values are still expressed within the realm of Moses' time. We are kind to our people that are like us. We are not really very much inclined to associate with those who are not like us. This is tribal thinking. And then we basically feel kind of protective of our own self, but we are not willing to kick ourselves in order to understand another person really well. So that's very important that we understand in the Baha'i marriage that what we're looking for is not just a person who's kind, because I tell you something. I remember there was a couple, she was her second marriage, and her new husband was the second marriage. And she came and said, well, we don't have the issue with religion, nothing. Because it's not important to him, religion. So, okay. So, apparently, for her, this was like, he told me, the religion is not important. I thought, well, this is not going to be a problem for us. So I felt really at peace and happy, and I wanted just to go ahead and marry, because so they get married. A couple of years later, they had children, 3 children, and the revolution in Iran happened. So the revolution in Iran happened, he was thinking, these kids are going to school and they're saying, we're Baha'is, and they walk in the house and they say, Allah, Apa. He was feeling what? Scared. Scared for his children that somebody would attack them and somebody would assault them. And he wanted them to be safe. And his action was, don't you dare to call my children and tell my children they're Baha'is. They cannot go to any Baha'i school. They cannot call themselves Baha'i. No prayers in this house. Basically what he was doing, he was responding to his feeling of what? Fear and protecting his children. Religion was absolutely not important, that's very true. But this time, the fact that religion was not important was backfiring on the whole value system of what she had, which was her values was, my children need to have a fortification of spiritual connection, because this is the point, this relationship is what rescues us from our own self. Right? We are willing to consider the other person's goodness, not because another person is good, because nobody is, but we are willing to listen because we have a relationship with this point of adoration. And this is Abdul Baha, this is Baha'u'llah. Our relationship with him that says, I would like to be able to be at peace with you. I would like to listen. I would like to be humble. I would like to be able to show my virtues and my qualities. So therefore, it is very important that each one of the people in the marriage have this relationship strongly, because this is the chimney. This is the place where you can go free. The marriage can go free. So I want to make sure that this matter of values versus virtues is very clear to you. Let me see what else I got. I want to leave some time for you questioning. And the value, by the way, of the men and women being equal in marriage becomes very important, because all of us have difficulty with this whole notion of equality of men and women when it comes to marriage, because we are the inheritors of the old traditions. Yeah? And we don't know, we might believe it. So the translation between our thought, that men and women are equal, and action can be miles and can sometimes be almost impossible. Just because we believe in something, it does not mean that we are able to act on it. So, and the Guardian actually says, somebody asked the Guardian, says, that's really amazing because this person is such a devoted Baha'i. Why is he doing this kind of, strange acts? The Guardian says, there is a big difference between people's faith and their character. Not necessarily, they're the same. And sometimes the Guardian says the person has to try and try and try for their whole life, and they can never bring these two together. So it's really the effort of a lifetime to be able to harmonize our faith, our belief, what we believe, what we want to be with our actions. And that's a battle of every individual self. And Abdul-Baha was the example of that, the perfection of that, but the rest of us fall somewhere short of this ability to make sure that our actions and our beliefs and thoughts want to be basically in harmony. Let's see. The other thing which I want to mention before I give to your question is having great respect. There is tremendous amount of sex addiction going on right now, especially with the whole notion of internet and the whole appetites which are out there. Addiction, in my view, is really an appetite that we don't respect very much, and we touch it, and then we become slaves of the appetite. And the appetite will never let us go free. It's just... And so we have to understand and respect the whole notion of our senses and exposure of our senses to whatever it is. And those of you who have not already learned, I don't know, how many of you have any courses or any knowledge of neuroscience? Okay. How many of you know about mirror neurons? Yeah, I would suggest that all of you see the information on mirror neurons. There's a wonderful Nova show on mirror neurons on YouTube or internet. Just punch Nova in mirror neurons. Mirror neurons was discovered by accident, and that was about maybe 6-7 years ago. And that was they were doing some testing with some monkeys. They wanted to know what were the motor neurons in human brain, in the monkey's brain actually. So they had this monkey, and they had 3 pieces of nut sitting in front of this monkey. And every time the monkey would touch any of these peanuts, they had wired its brain, and the brain would go buzz. So they knew, okay, yeah, they had isolated the neurons that are supposed to be associated with action, okay? So all of a sudden, the monkey was sitting and resting, but the scientists start moving these peanuts around, and every time he touched one of these peanuts, the buzzer of the brain of the monkey goes on. And so the scientists were just like, wow, what's happening here? Monkey is not doing anything, I'm doing something. Anyway, make a long story short, they found out that we also as human beings, we have these neurons in our brain that they called it later on. First they called it monkey do, monkey see, monkey do. But then later on they made it mirror neurons. These neurons basically makes it possible for us that what we see is the same as what we do, as what we imagine. All 3 makes us susceptible to a habit that will form, or an appetite that is created. So, for example, you can see it in learning. So if somebody wants to learn how to play the piano, they can see a teacher playing the piano, they learn by observing. They can play the piano and they learn. They can sit in imagination in a prison, which a prisoner who was in prison for many years was a pianist. And when he came, he could perform right away. They said, I've been in prison for all these years. How in the world are you so ready to play? He said, because I practiced in my mind in the prison. So we can do a lot. So we have to really respect the power of our imagination, and don't ever underestimate what kind of appetite it can create in us that will grab us by our necks and will imprison us and hijack us for the rest of our life. So respect for our imagination is very important. Exposing ourselves, not just by the things we watch, not just by the things we do, by the things we entertain in our imagination. The other thing which I want to mention is one of the things that very few Baha'is I really see to practice is meditation. And the whole, Baha'u'llah has a very strong statement about meditation, something to say that if the person who does not meditate, you cannot call that a human being. He calls it a faculty of meditation. That means something develops in us, a muscle, that without it, we won't be able to really be humble, be loving, be reflective, and really bring ourselves into account. And our speed of life is so much that before we know it, we just basically are hijacked to the end of our life. And we will not have no chance to really evaluate ourselves. So putting in our diet of the day, not only the obligatory prayer, and reflecting on it, but also meditation. Now you can do meditation while you're gardening, while you're driving, while you can do, but you need to learn about it, and there's a lot of information about the skills of meditation, and a lot of scientific new research about meditation. So meditation opens the door of your mind to be able to really operate itself in the best way. So a good habit to develop. So let me just stop here and see what are some of the questions that you might have about marriage, because how much time do we have? 10 minutes. So we have a little bit of time. So let me see what comes to your mind. Yes?
Kind of touched upon sexual addictions, or did you kind of expand on that, or what society said?
Actually, yes. You know, one of the groups that has done tremendous amount of service, which agrees with the spirit and the teachings of the faith, is the 12-step people. 12-step people have no, they really take the matter very seriously, and they don't play games with it. So what they do, these are free groups that they have, and they approach it from a spiritual perspective. And my suggestion is, all of you should go and check what it is, just to see what's going on, just so you know what a struggle this is among the people. And then the support of the group and the knowledge and the sharing and especially the support will allow you and give you the discipline to be able to basically get rid of the dark waiter, if there is anything like that, and not to take things very, very slightly, because this is a very difficult addiction to get rid of. And addiction, as I said, it just is really, truly, you can say universally, is an appetite. You eat something, you take something, it feels good. The second time, the third time, before you know it, you cannot go free from it. So that's what, there is a group in the faith called Banasa that they also do some very good support, so you can also go on their website and see what's available. But the best remedy is spiritually fortified approach, like 12-step. There are a lot of articles and stuff like that. So it will help you to, all of us, to learn how to basically be respectful of our imagination and not to take this matter lightly, because it can ruin marriages, relationships, but mostly it can ruin our relationship with our own self and with Baha'u'llah. It's very difficult thing to fight.
Is this 12-step an organization that you're speaking of?
12-step is actually, it was an organization, self-help organization that started in the United States. Almost everybody knows about it, because in every corner of a city there is a group, whether it is dealing with an alcoholic anonymous, or sexaholic anonymous, with other addictions. And they're all over the world, actually. And the people who started it, they had very great, from my knowledge, they had very close idea and knowledge of the faith. And they basically brought it into the system. So it's really, I have great respect for them. Through the years, they have been very, very effective and successful in what they offer for free. Yes.
You mentioned the point of adoration in your talk. How important is it that the point of adoration of the other person be similar or the same as yours for a relationship to work? And is it possible for it to work if they're not similar?
Marriage is not a temporary relationship. Marriage is not a relationship that is basically predictable. Right. Marriage just goes through all kinds of, it's like putting one of your leg in the sack and the other person's leg, and then you say, let's climb up this mountain.
with all kinds of unexpected things that come your way which you have no idea. You don't know how the other person reacts to fear. You don't know how the other person reacts to frustration. You don't know how the other person reacts to power, wanting power, control, whatever it is. I mean, these are all taking things for granted. So therefore, having at least this point of adoration, common point of adoration, at least tells you that you know where to go to find this person's aspiration and hope. One of the advantages of the faith, other religions, they have, but the advantage of the faith is, as we know, faith is conscious knowledge putting into action. Now, the problem is, if you don't know where to go for the conscious knowledge in other, let's say, Hindu, you don't have any source of going to, because every Hindu household has their own whatever idea of what they Hindu should be. But in the faith is the only cause that the body of information is available universally to everyone, including the non-Baha'is. So you can go and find a quotation, you can go find the passage in the long obligated prayer, and you say, well, I turn to this prayer and I say, do not look upon my hopes and my doings, nay, rather look upon thy will that has encompassed the heavens and the earth. Well, honey, this has happened to us, but we said that to Baha'u'llah, and now something has happened which is against our will, but we already asked for that and agreed with that. It's a lot easier to work with someone and transcend with them and get yourself over the barriers than someone who thinks, for example, death is finished, is gone, and they go into a great depression, and they're angry with God, and they're kicking, and they just basically are out. That's where the values come from. That's why it's so important. It's difficult to know ourselves, and now to go find the other person who you don't know where they are. Yes.
You indicated earlier that we should not
Can you speak louder?
Sure, you indicated we should not have those 4 things in our life: criticism, defensiveness, content, and stonewalling. So my question is, let's say you're at the inception of your courtship and the individual you're with doesn't have the same Baha'i values as you do, so you just tend to, or at least I tend to criticize them because of that. So how would you control yourself so you don't criticize that person? I mean, is that the wrong thing to do? If they don't have, even though they're Baha'i, but they don't live the Baha'i lifestyle that, you or your family lives. So how do you prevent yourself from criticizing if we shouldn't have one of those? The other 3 I understand, but the first one.
Very good question. Criticism is basically a very common response to fear. We see something in another person, we think this is going to be very difficult to deal with, and we feel exceptional fear. And when we feel fear, we want to deal with the fear, and the way we deal with it is a very dysfunctional way, and that is attacking the other person. And the response generally would be the other person will defend. This whole system goes into a very bad spirit. So if you cannot find yourself accepting of the other person, and this is during the investigation period. I don't call it dating, I call it Baha'is investigate one another. Because dating are all kinds of shapes and forms, and you know what, this was a term that came into existence some years ago in the early 1900s, and when the driving movies came, and they would put the time they would go to driving movies, and then we had a lot of out-of-wedlock pregnancies coming out of that too, a lot of things. So I would call it Baha'is investigating each other, and that investigation has some basically boundaries. And one of them is no sexual relationship in that time, because when you get involved in that, you will not be able to judge yourself and the other person, because the height of that excitement that you join and the oxytocin that comes out, it gives you a false signal of being connected and attached. And that is not, there's no good marriage that is held together just by good sex. So just don't ever think that's a guarantee. So a good sex is an outcome of a good relationship, but never the other way around. So therefore, don't bring it into the relationship, because it will basically blind you to knowing what's going on, numb you. So if you find that that's difficult, I would say maybe you can call, count your blessings and run as fast because, because at this stage you can do that, but with 1 or 2 children you cannot do that.
So it's okay to criticize them?
No, it's not okay to do that, but you cannot. No, because again, it's a defensiveness of the other person, and you don't want a pattern of attack and defense in a very close relationship. It will drain your whole energy. You don't want to set such a pattern in your home. So if you cannot really elevate yourself, that means maybe that's a signal that this is not a good, really good marriage to get into because you're having difficult value system problems, and that's serious. Okay, let's see back in there. Yeah.
And following up on the criticism, what would you suggest as far as a positive way to address issues with a person that you may notice or observe that could possibly cause conflict, but not come across in a criticism form?
Wonderful. Well, you know, years ago there used to be this pattern of iMessages. You know, so basically you can use this. You say, you know, when you come home and you know you're tired and you don't talk and don't say anything. I'm thinking that maybe you're upset with me or something. I feel very nervous, very uptight, and I really want us to be loving and friendly. What can we do to address this issue? So that's a very non-threatening way of saying it. Basically sharing your observation. Not something that you never want to do is saying, I think you're a jerk. Or even the worst, people think that when they put the word feel, it becomes a feeling, and then somehow Americans have come to this idea that feelings are okay. To say, I feel you're a jerk. But that's not, first of all, that's not a feeling, that's a thinking. And that's an attacking and criticizing, and the person is going to defend if they have any kind of basically sense of self. And if they don't, you'll be even more worried. So you have to find ways. I would suggest Gottman's books are very good for teaching you how to do a soft start, how to basically separate complaining from criticizing, because complaining is softer. You know, honey, it really makes me nervous when you drive so fast. It's just like, I don't know what to do. It just means my blood pressure goes up. That's giving information about yourself. You're not saying, you're such a nut, what is this?
So I think, going off the same...
Yeah, we are almost finished.
So what about constructive criticism? Because if you have the same mentality that, oh, you should have an open thought, then maybe she's providing criticism for me so that it's not an attack on me, but it's constructive criticism, so that we can work
How many of you ever have been the recipient of the constructive criticism and felt great? Empowered. Just wanted to love the person. Doesn't exist. You need to learn how to say things so it's not criticism. The only thing you can say, you can give information about yourself. It makes me very nervous, you say. You know, it really makes me, and giving information about your vulnerable feeling is a very good way of saying it. Because nobody wants to pick someone who is vulnerable. So you say, this makes me really afraid. When you tell me to your children, when you tell me you come home at 10 and it's 1 o'clock, you're not here, I just absolutely have a heart attack. I just didn't know where to go. I didn't know whether I should call the police. I didn't know. Instead of saying, you absolutely have no respect for anybody except for yourself. So, that is not going to create a relationship which is respectful and any of that. So, in my life, I have never seen a constructive criticism. And so stay away from criticism. It's hot. Don't touch it. Yes.
So what if your relationship goes to the point that you criticize each other and then you want to get it back to the normal marriage? What can you
Go
do?
see a good therapist. Yeah. Go see a good therapist who has very good knowledge of spiritual qualities, really. There are therapists who work, good therapists you find anywhere around the world. They can also work through Skype.
So you have to see a therapist, you can't do it yourself.
You don't know, because once the
developed. It's very difficult because it needs the collaboration of both. And when a system of criticism seeps in, people become very defensive. And when people are defensive, it's very difficult to break through it. So a good therapist might do several sessions of work, magic. It's magic. Yeah. And Baha'i tells us, and House of Justice says, we need to make the best use of harmony of science and religion. Don't be afraid, because I tell you something, in my experience, the group that uses the therapist the most are the Persian Muslims. They come for everything. Oh, my child is just fell in love with this girl, I'm not so sure. Could we meet her? Yes. Oh, I don't know, for very small stuff, it's very interesting to me, because they think, no, I'm here, why not I use it?
Do you think it's possible to have two people in a relationship that...
Can you say louder?
So do you think it's possible to have two people in a relationship that are of the same mind with regards to criticism, and maybe that's not the right word, but so that they can criticize each other and give that sort of feedback openly and take it openly and to work on it and integrate it? Like I use the word
Give me an
criticism.
example. Give me an example.
Like I have so for example, my two best friends, the three of us are all very, very open with each other. We're all very, very critical of each other. And no, really, we're extremely critical. And so
give me an example. What do you say to each other?
So whenever one of us is late, we hate people that aren't punctual. And so we always say, hey, you were 5 minutes late, that's not okay. And they say, okay, I'll work on it for next time. And so anytime there's anything that bothers one of us, we always tell each other straight up that, like, no, I don't like it that you did this. It bothered me. And they say, okay, and either we work on it or we discuss it. So.
Okay. First of all, that is not a criticism. That is basically making a statement about something that bothers you. You say, you know, you were 5 minutes late, it bothers me. And then you finish it right there and you move on. Criticism is, you know, you have no sense of time. You know what? You just constantly, you just have no respect for anybody else. You just don't, I don't know why even you carry a watch. You know, it's like hitting the person at the level of personality and character, and there's nothing you can do with that. I mean, there's nobody who stands up and listening to that.
So the problem isn't the message, it's the way it's delivered.
Absolutely, because you have a form and you have a spirit. The form is just the words you say, but the spirit is what does the person in, and spirit of criticism is really deadly. I don't know how much time we have.
Can you introduce us to the books that we can read?
Huh?
Few books that is good for the marriages?
Few books that are good for marriage. I would definitely suggest, there's a wonderful body of research that has come up that refers to the whole notion of attachment in early childhood, the patterns of attachment to the parents. And they found out by research that this pattern of attachment, whether you have been having a secure attachment to parents, an anxious attachment, or an avoidant, these are the three categories of attachment. Basically, secure attachment is a parent who has been available, loving, as Baha'u'llah mentioned in the hidden words. You know, the 2 pounds of milk, she's been loving, she's been there. So the child doesn't have any kind of worries about mother not being there. So this person is very secure. And in their relationship in marriage, they kind of turn out to be like that. That's one. The other kind is anxious. That means sometimes the parent is there, sometimes it's not there, sometimes they can trust the parent's reaction, sometimes cannot, and this person is always worried. So whenever they have a relationship, constantly their thought is, you know, if this person doesn't appear, the first thing is, there's something wrong with me, maybe I didn't do it right, maybe I didn't say the right thing. So they're really anxious and they basically work on that. And then the other one is an avoidant personality, which is, they have been so basically neglected or abused or whatever that they learn the way to stay safe is absolutely have no relationship. And then these people generally they just, oh, I'm coming, but they don't come, and then they're upset, and then you cannot get the response, and then the anxious and the avoidant really seek each other. They just, you know, they just come together and they. So the book that I recommend that it was very helpful to read about just having this knowledge is called Attached. And this is by Amir Levin, which is who's a Israeli psychologist, Levin, and the book is Attached. I would definitely recommend that those who are thinking about marriage, or those who are not thinking about or already been married, to read this book. Has a lot of exercises, has a lot of self-discovery exercises. I definitely recommend that. Anything from John Gottman, definitely I would recommend, because it's very much in line with the ideas of spiritual connection and faith.
Can you spell Gottman?
Gottman, Gottman, John Gottman. He just passed away. He's from University of Washington. So those are the two. Oh, by the way, Mahra sitting over here, she's from Tajikistan. Mahra and I got together a few weeks ago, and we put a 45-minute video on YouTube called Preparation for Baha'i Marriage. Some of these ideas are there, so we hope that you might use it for discussions and for exploration with your person that you investigate, or just, sitting at a family thing and then explore it. Yes?
Interfaith marriages, or Baha'i.
That's why I said that you have to really examine the whole notion of values. Interfaith really means that we have different values. And those different values can become very difficult to handle once you go into this relationship that is a commitment. And for those of you, by the way, who are asking this question and you haven't asked it, cohabitation before marriage basically erodes the foundation of the stability of marriage. And divorce among people who cohabit before marriage is a lot more than those who do not cohabit. The reason is why? Is what? Because
there's a saying they already have the milk, so why purchase the milkman?
What is that? What is that? That's very true. But the other one is marriage, success in marriage is really a factor of commitment. And those who cohabit basically don't have yet the value of commitment firm. They say, I'm going to try it. If I like it, if not, I'm out. That kind of a personality, that kind of an approach means this is a wobbly, this is not a place you can trust. This is not somewhere the person is going to stay with you through thick and thin and figure out how this whole relationship will actually emerge. So that's why the likelihood of divorce is a lot higher among people who get into premarital relationship or cohabitation before marriage. So that's for those of you who are thinking about this notion of cohabitation. And besides, in the Baha'i writings, of course, it is not allowed to do cohabitation because marriage is a matter of, how to call it, this is not a romantic love institution. Marriage is not. It's a moral and a social institution because it really rests on those foundations of moral and social values. So therefore, going into it because the American and the Westerners go into marriage because of love, they abandon it because of love. I don't love him, I'm out. I'm loving, I'm going in. So that the Baha'i divorce is not going to happen based on the fact that you don't love someone. So because our emotions can change through marriage, but we need to stay with the commitment until we make it work. So open your eyes before you get married and borrow a whole bunch more. Two that you have and a whole bunch more. Then close one and close the other after you marry.